All right, so welcome to the Just Saying podcast. This is technically my first episode back. I'm your host, Mara, and today I have Sara Silverstein with me, who is I was going to say Philly legend, but I feel like we're about to go nationwide this year. So a nationwide multiverse entrepreneur. Right now we're like super into her sensual coaching. That's really what we brought her on here to talk about, because I feel like I love spirituality and like all of the woo-woo things, and I feel like you do too. And you're just into like sensuality and sexuality and exploring all of that, like sex positive, which people think that those two things can't exist together.
Of course they do.
I'm like, they're literally besties.
Yes.
You can't have magic without sex. That's crazy. Like, what? So I'm like, who better to have than you? And like, we've talked about chatting. And so I'm like, okay. I'm
pretty sure like I berated you into this.
You helped me. You're like, come on. I'm like, okay, let's go. So this morning when you texted me, you're like, are we still good? I'm like, oh, we are more than good. I've been mentally preparing for this for a week because I'm just like, I have so many things we could talk about.
Lay it on me.
We also have Zeus in the studio, so if you hear breathing or any noise, we're going to talk to him after the show about his cameos and how to conduct himself. So apologies in advance, and also apologies to you in advance if he does anything crazy. But I feel like, the one thing that blew your mind about me is that I literally didn't know women had orgasms.
Yes.
Like for majority of my life. I like had my first orgasm like within the past 3 years, I'd say. And I'm 29.
What? And
I was looking at your Instagram a little bit today, and I was like cracking up because I saw the post about how many vulva havers come, and what is the actual answer on
so
this?
Penetrative sex with women or vulva havers, which I like to include both of them because not everyone who has a vulva identifies as a woman. So yes. Just a little sidebar on that. But you can use whatever language feels comfortable for you.
Yes.
But I was reading this book called Clitorit. I don't remember the author anymore. But it was saying how I think 18% of women or vulva havers can have an orgasm with penetrative sex alone. And
18%.
18%. So that's no clitoral stimulation whatsoever, just penetrative sex.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but for most of my life, I was under the guise that like sex was penetrative sex only, and that would lead me to this amazing feel-good experience. So then when it wasn't happening, I was very confused.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I doing wrong here though?
Right.
And there isn't a guidebook. And especially back in the day, there were no one talking about female sexuality or pleasure of anything.
No.
I always joke, like Cosmo told me 100 different ways to please my boyfriend, but there was no way to please myself, or I wasn't seeing the kind of inverse in male magazines either. So I was like, what is happening here?
Yep. I didn't even know that was an option. Like literally like my first relationship was like 5 years, and he was a little bit older than me, and we would have sex, and that was like the first person that I had like constant like consensual feel good intimate sex with. And he would be like, what's the hold up? I'm like, yeah, I love it. It's great. It's so fun. I'm having so much fun.
Well, another part of sex that I often like to think about is that people think that the point of sex is to have an orgasm. That is not it. The point of sex is to have an intimate moment with someone. And if it leads to orgasmic pleasure, then amazing. But as someone who didn't receive any sort of pleasurable orgasmic experiences with partners until my 30s, I would have a great time. I wasn't mad about it.
Right.
But they would be like, did you come? And I'm like, no.
And then
was I supposed to? Yes. And then like the stress that they put on you, or they're like, well, I did all the right things, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, you did the things that you know, but there was no one ever asking me, did that feel good? What did I like? How could they please me? It was just using, the bag of tools that they had and expecting that's going to work on every partner that you have, which is silly because we're all different.
That part. And also like I feel like men, it's funny because anytime like I've talked to guy friends about this, they're like, oh, well, if you didn't come like the first time that we hook up, like I'm not hooking up with you again. And I'm like, that's crazy. crazy. Like, you can't not have sex with someone because they didn't come the first time.
Yes. Also, like, it's about connection. And for most of my clients that I talk to who have had one night stands, they're like, yeah, well, it was like pleasurable in the experience that they got, you know, that kind of connection that they were desiring. But in order for somebody to feel safe to let go enough to have that orgasmic pleasure moment, it takes some time. It's like women and vulva havers are going to have a different level of connection and communication that's really vital for us to get there, whilst it's very different for men or penis havers.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a totally different ride. And to think that just because something works for you is going to work for everybody else is insane. And also
Literally.
thinking that you can provide that kind of pleasure for somebody on a first encounter. What's up?
And also, like, I mean, even women have that kind of vibe sometimes where it's like, oh, the sex wasn't good. I'm like, babe, it was the first time.
Yes.
Like, you don't even know this person. Like, you have to, like, play. And I feel like a lot of times people, like, at least from my experience, obviously I deal more with men when I'm talking about sex or, like, engaging in sex. But it's like, they feel like intimacy is sex. And I'm like, no. Like, stop telling me you were the girls you were intimate with. Like, you could be intimate with girls that you didn't even have sex with.
Yeah.
And, like, that's just a whole nother, like, can of worms too.
There's so many different layers to it. And I think this is kind of where spirituality and sex do overlap for those of us that are in this realm, that are interested in doing internal work, understanding what we actually need, and then having that shared experience with somebody else. It's not just the same equation over and over again. Like, things are going to change every time. And also, if you are a female or a vulva haver and you have your cycle, you change every single day.
Yep.
So what felt good yesterday may not feel good for me today.
Right.
So bless my husband. He rolls with the punches quite well. I love him. But there's just so many different layers to that. And he has to be like, oh, does this kind of touch feel good for you?
Right.
Is this what you're interested in today? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's explore.
Right.
But it's like, have an open mind and be curious about what's going on, rather than just thinking what you've done is always going to work.
Right.
Because that's
it's not like a
egotistical.
lock and key, like a turn lock
Yes.
for your gym locker. Like, it's way, you know, like you're saying, even with this cycle, like, this summer, I feel like it was like the first time I had a guy around that I was like having, as an adult, like continual sex with, like for a longer period of time, and like also in a relationship way too. Like, we were, because I have a tendency of like having all of like the boyfriend things minus the sex, or the sex and they don't want to take me out to dinner. Type vibe, you know?
Yeah.
And so this summer was the first time in a while where it was like both of the things in one, as best to the degree to which I allowed it. And like, I don't know, it would be funny because there would be times where like I'm watching my Flow app and I'm like learning my cycle and I'm like, no, not realizing ovulation or like things like that. And like, there was one time where it was like a super close call and I was like, we're not playing this game because actually today I'm also ovulating.
Yeah.
And he's like, why would you have sex with me when you're ovulating? I'm like, I'm so horny.
Yes, because we are built to want to have sex during that time. However, there are things like condoms that you can just use.
Literally.
I was just binge watching a reality television show where there was a guy saying how he doesn't want to have sex with his partner because she's not on birth control.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I can't chance having like a little me or her running around just yet. And I was like, you imbecile.
Yeah.
You cannot get pregnant every day. That isn't how it works. And then I had to pull it back and be like, I know about that because I've taken the time to educate myself.
Right.
And we don't live in a society where any of this is kind of talked about. So of course he's going to be afraid that he's going to get his wife pregnant.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like, okay, that is fair. However, we need to educate people on that. So ovulation exists to kind of raise everything in the body. We become very horny and we want to have sex because our bodies are built to make babies. So
Science.
If you don't want to have babies, wear a condom. You don't always have to have hormonal contraceptive kind of coming in, which can definitely mess with women's bodies.
Yep.
And at least we're talking about it more. For me, it tanks me emotionally. I am so radically depressed on it that I've chosen to not be on it. But I've been in a committed partnership having unprotected sex for the past few years with the same person. And guess what? No baby.
Right.
Because I listen to when my body is ovulating. So if I'm in that window like 4 or 5 days, then we use different precautions.
Right.
Or we have different kinds of sex that doesn't require semen to be in my body.
Right. on it is a different story.
Yes.
We have options.
We have options.
Which is amazing.
Yes, but people need to know about their options and start to be educated more on it. Like,
Well, especially too, because you're so right about the like birth control. Like, I'm off birth control too, and that's like a point of contention when I start like seeing someone new. I'm like, yeah, I'm not on birth control, but like I don't. First of all, I'm just not having a baby. That's what you need to know. Like,
Yeah.
period. But like, there is ways to like work with it, and there's like also other types of sex or other types of ways to build intimacy.
yes, definitely.
Which is
and
like-
if you're that concerned, it's not all on us to figure this out, by the way. Like,
And there's like male contraceptive.
just put a condom on. Just
Or
put
that,
the condom
literally.
on. Like, let's just solve that problem. And also, if you are not in a committed relationship and you're having sex with multiple people, you should be wearing a condom anyways, because
Agreed.
you will get an STD, an STI. Something is going to happen to you, and you're going to continue to pass it on to others, and that is negligent and wrong.
No, 1,000%.
He agrees.
Zeus. Okay, so, this is what we were talking about before we had some time to chat before we started recording today about the anticlimactic life that I've lived, which I literally like didn't know that. Like, I had fun, it felt good and all of that, but I just didn't have like an explosion. Not an explosion, but
Right. Well, I mean, orgasms also feel different for every person. So my first question is, did you ever experience an orgasm with solo pleasure?
no. I didn't even know that was an option though, because of like, I honestly think, and my mom, if she heard this, she would be like, of course you're gonna blame me. And it's like, not a blame thing, because
Yes.
I know that everyone is like doing the best that they can with what they have and what they've experienced. And my mom is not like a very like sexual person, you know?
Yeah.
And so like growing up, it's like sex is for marriage and sex is for making babies, and that's that. And it's like when I got a vibrator when I was 16 and she found it, it was immediately in the trash. Like,
Did you ever get to use it?
probably like maybe once or twice.
Okay.
And it wasn't even like a conversation, because it was just an automatic no.
Yeah.
Like, don't go there, don't bring it up, and like that's it. So like I only knew from like when I would have sleepovers and we would be up at 3 a.m. and like porn would come on TV and I'm like,
Wasn't that the best feeling though?
Yes!
I just remember feeling like so naughty, and like my whole body would be tingly, and I would be like,
Yes!
is anyone else feeling like this? But even back then, like I couldn't articulate it.
Yeah.
And I think like we all watched it in silence and we're like, oh my God, nobody bust in on us. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I can feel everything in my body. I humped everything when I was a kid.
Amazing.
Like, I had a canopy bed, so I would just like hump that, and pillows, stuffed animals, you name it. I was like, what is this feeling? I need more of it.
Well, and the
I think I was
humping.
like destined for this kind of line of work.
I love that. That's perfect. You're like, I'm right in alignment. You're like, actually, I have years of experience.
Well, I remember like I'm much older than you, but like AOL when it was a thing. Hey, my darling. When AOL was like a new thing, and I was like chatting inappropriately with far older men, but then I would like it would lead me to porn sites,
Yeah.
and we were like the first house on our block that had computers, and I was like click click click, like, oh my God, what is this? Like, oh.
Okay.
I needed more of it. Like, I needed to understand it. And then I was like, I wanted to show my friends, but I was also very embarrassed to do that, which is funny because
And it's
still,
like you didn't know which ones would be okay.
Yeah, for
with it.
sure.
Like, give consent almost.
there's no consent happening. I think it was like 13,
Right.
12. I don't know, something way too young for that kind of behavior. But I remember even then being like, I want to share this with people, but I don't know how to talk about it. And that's something that I find regularly with clients who are like, can I say these things to you? I'm like, oh my God, lay it all on me.
Yeah,
What do
you're
you
like, say
mean? Like,
anything.
I am the person to say it with. Like, this is a safe space. I'm not talking about this with anybody else.
Right.
Like, I will only ever use my lived experience, which is robust
Right.
and insane.
You're like, no problem.
Yes.
That's why I love like my older friends too, because I feel like, have you met oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget her name. She created Touchy Feely, Candace.
I just bought that. I haven't met her. I have to meet her.
Okay, so she is hilarious because she's like, I have had sex with a billion people and I don't care, and I will continue to do that, and because I can, and like, let's talk about it. And I'm like, that's why the one day I was like, oh my God, I was like, Sarah, Candace, like that would be like such a fun chat, because they don't care. And like, why there's so
do
much
we care?
shame.
Yes.
Yeah, like why?
Sexuality and shame, I think, like go hand in hand. And it's something where we haven't been taught that we can talk about it. And it also comes down to the fact that like, if we are into something that maybe isn't mainstream, we're afraid, how are we going to be responded to? Are you going to shun me? Is my sexual proclivity is going to be something that you're going to judge and make me feel like, oh, I'm not a part of anymore? Because we are in this lifetime to connect to other people. So I think it's important to be able to like be a little bit more open with that. Like when people tell me their kinks, I'm like, oh my God, tell me more. It doesn't have to float my boat, right?
And it's just cool. Like, and I love like your vocab. Like I resonate with you a lot because of the way you articulate yourself and like the things that you focus on, because focus is like just so important. And I think a lot of times we're moving from shame. And so we're like focusing on like being secretive or like things like that, and it's like, no, it doesn't have to be that.
It's not going to work like that. That's not how we shift shame. We shift shame by bringing those things to the light, by talking with other people, by having that connection, by finding a moment of gratitude in whatever it is that you are about, and being like, oh yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah, just
like,
open.
I've had plenty of partners that I've introduced to the BDSM world, and I have had a myriad of responses where it's been like, oh my gosh, you're deeply fucked up. What are you doing? And then other people being like, oh my gosh, wait, can we go to a rope jam? Like, what about a sex party? Like, what do we do about this?
Right.
And I'm like, let's go. Like, I have no problem walking with somebody hand in hand through these experiences, because if you have an interest, you should explore it. I always say, try everything twice. First time, you're going to judge the shit out of it, right? So you're going to be mentally obsessed with it. Second time, you're going to figure out, is it right for you?
Right.
And all you have to do is check in with your body. If your body tells you no, which is basically you need to figure out what your alarm bells for your own body are first.
Right.
But if you start to feel those twinges of like, I got to get the hell out of here, you get to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, you can.
Like,
you have that option.
The thing.
Yeah.
People shame like kinky humans or the BDSM world, and I'm like, the baseline here is safe, sane, and consensual. So that is like, always going to be the things that we are upholding.
1,000%. And that's like poly even.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that's why like I get so irritated when like people do try to be like, oh, you can't talk about that. Like if you're into spirituality, you can't talk about that. I'm like, no, they're like, they help each other, because if you go into it with the curiosity and the explorative energy and like just the wanting to know,
Human connection is a spiritual experience. We are all made up of energy. That's all it is.
Yeah.
However, we have these ideas that have been supplanted by society or from lived experience that tells us that like, oh no, that's not okay. We get to judge that. We get to shame that. Listen, I've been in poly relationships, you name it. I've explored it. They're not for me. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to look at something and be like, oh, you doing that? No, thank you. Like, no, if that works for you, that works for you.
Right.
And non-monogamy is definitely on the rise, and more people are talking about it. I don't know if we're meant to be monogamous people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am currently happy in my monogamous partnership, but I can't say when I'm 65 or 70 that I'm still going to be jiving on that, or hell, even in 5 years. I don't know. But the baseline of my relationship with my husband is that we have communication where we talk about these things. Like we were just at a wedding, and oh my God, there was the hottest woman there of all time. I was dying 1,000 deaths. And I was like, I have to keep looking at her. Like we were on the dance floor, and I was like, turn around, like, let me see her. And this was kind of like his first experience of seeing me being really turned on by a girl.
Right.
And he was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening here? But we just got to play with it. Right. So it's not that we acted on anything, because that's not in a part of our relationship where we want that quite yet, or maybe ever. I don't know. But it was so fun to feel like that flirtatious energy that was happening, and just to watch how he was responding to it.
Right. And
I
it's
was
like how you know that's your like person also.
Definitely. Like he's never shamed me for anything, which is a gift, because he is a very, very normal human with just like the biggest heart of all time. And I'm a little bit of a freak show. Like I come with a lot of baggage, a lot of trauma that I've been in a lot of therapy with. And he's like, okay, cool. I see you doing this work. This isn't weird. Let's explore it. Or, hey, that actually hurts my feelings. Could you maybe not do that? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Of course. Or actually, I'm not into pegging. Can we stop having this conversation? And I'm like, God damn it.
No, you can't do that.
Fine, like... But there's just so many different layers to sexuality and connection. And I just want to continue to advocate for people to say, hey, this is what I'm into, or explore it. I just finished a sensuality program with 27 gals where I was leading them into understanding the 5 different senses and how that can lead into their sensuality, their pleasure, and their joy. And now when I talk about sensuality, people immediately think that I'm talking about the bedroom. It's not that. Our sensuality exists everywhere. Kind of like you were saying, intimacy is beyond just penetrative sex, in the same way that foreplay is also just beyond what's happening in the bedroom. There are so many layers to these kinds of things. And when we break them down, when you can seek out sensations of pleasure in your day to day, then when you are in those intimate connections in the bedroom or wherever you choose to have sex, it gets to be amplified so much more. And I think life is hard enough. So I'm always looking for the moments of joy. And I think you're very similar in that realm, which is why I've been very drawn to you, where I'm just like, no, like that's in the forefront of our minds. We're chasing that. Otherwise, it's very easy to sit into the depressive state or to be, you know, the bicker in the corner or thinking that you're missing out on something or you're judging somebody else. All of that is such a negative energy. And listen, I'm no saint. I judge the shit out of most things. But I also try to find something like, I'm like, okay, cool. If I'm like hating on something, what's something that I can also like? And there's a balance in all of it. But I am certainly more prone to seeking out the moments of joy, connection, pleasure, and all of that because that fills me up.
And it just feels better.
Yes.
Like people will be like, why are you like that? And it's like,
why are you not like that?
It feels better. Like, I like it better here. Like, and people will be like, you're so, like, extra, like, so da-da-da. And it's like, I love it here. Like, it feels better here. Why would I not do that? Like, or even, like, you know, condescending things like, okay, Miss Positivity, like, are you okay? Like, are you okay? But it's true. And, like, even, like, learning, like, your love languages and things like that. Because, like, when you're saying the sensuality, like outside of even another person, like just learning like the things, like, you know, as you get older, you realize like, oh, I'm really a smell person. Like I love smell. Or like, I mean, I don't really like to be touched unless like I want you to be touching me. And then if I want you to be touching me, I actually want you to touch me all the time.
I love that. That's a boundary. And then you can communicate that.
Yeah.
I, with my clients, will kind of talk about love languages. How do you like to give them? How do you like to receive them? And then also you have to ask that if you have a partner, what are theirs? Right. And then like another layer is this thing called the erotic blueprint, which was created by this woman named Jaya. And it's fascinating. She just wrote a book. It's really fun, but it breaks it down into 5 energetic blueprints. So we're going to have the kinky, which is obviously like fun, anything outside of like the standard norm of what we would think, or anything that feels taboo to you, like not even like across the board, but if it feels taboo to you, that's kinky, which I think is fun. There is a sensualist, where using your senses is going to be very important, thinking of like setting and scene, so everything is perfect for you to be present in that. There is just the general sexual, who it's like you don't need much of anything, you have this like sexual mindset and you're like, no, we're just gonna go for it, like let's have at it. And then there's the energetic, where it's the play with energy between bodies. So my husband is that, and he loves the moment like before we kiss, or the like the energetic buildup that happens, you know, throughout the day that will turn him on, which I think is fun. And then the last one is a shapeshifter, which is what I am.
That's, I feel like what I would be too.
So it's basically like the embodiment of all of them. But I was a sensual for a very long time. And then because of the safety net that I feel in my partnership, I have shifted into the shapeshifter, which I think is really fun. He kind of gives me the permission to explore all of them together, which is a gift. And the sensual, or the shapeshifter, just gets to embody all of that, and it can be different from day to day. So sorry for him. But you know, there's just lots of things that are changing all the time, but paying attention and utilizing how much you can learn about yourself first, and then like alchemizing that, figuring out your language around it. And then you can have those conversations with your potential partner, a potential one night stand. I think it's the communication side, especially for women and vulva havers, where they're not advocating for their wants and needs. The amount of times that I just laid back and let somebody do whatever they wanted to me because I was like, I don't know how to say I don't like that. Like, I don't know how to say just up and to the left, and to the left.
Even just like no, sometimes you don't even know how to say.
Exactly.
Like, it's like, there's times where like, you know, you're with a guy like, and you think you're about to like snuggle, and then it's like, they start going, it's like, you don't have like the words to say no. Yeah.
Well, and also, how does somebody react when you do say no? Right?
Exactly.
Like, I've been in scenarios where I'm like, hey, I'm actually like not in the mood. And they're like, oh, you know, and like I date men and women. So I've had both sexes kind of respond to it like that. And I'm just like, okay, cool. So you obviously need that, you know, orgasmic pleasure. You can go self-pleasure. If you want me to watch you, I will happily watch you. But what I'm telling you is that right now, I don't feel like a sexualized being. Right. My sexual brakes are on, which comes from this book called Come As You Are by Emily N. But she puts it into this idea where we're going to have, you know, our break is on, where it's like no sex at all. And then it can kind of come off, and then you're going to feel more like a sexualized person. Right. But again, figuring out that language, and then also being able to advocate for no. And if somebody wants to fight you back on that, get the fuck out of that situation.
No, literally.
Like I'm not
and it's
here
just like,
for it.
now you just played yourself, because it's always forever now. Like, I don't want to be feeling like that.
And that's something from the kink world that I learned, is that a yes can become a no, but a no cannot become a yes. So it's like really honoring that. So if you're pushing someone in that scenario where they've already said no, if they then switch it to a yes, there's likely not actual consent happening there.
Right.
And there are plenty of individuals who do not know how to advocate for themselves, myself included. I have been in sexual situations where I have not wanted to be a part of it. The no was not heard. I felt unsafe. I didn't know how to get out of there. And then things ensued that I didn't like.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, interesting. So I had to learn about that. I had to go into therapy.
Exactly. I was just about to say, like, that's something for you to carry then too, because like now, like, you're like, okay, am I mad at myself that I like let that happen? Like, could I have protected myself better? Like, it's like intertwined in like all these other like relationships.
100%. So I mean, also a way to start in figuring out your voice in that, or hearing that, is say no in your day-to-day life. Right. Say no to your friends, your family. You know, like if somebody, my go-to example is like if somebody invites me to a group dinner, it's a no for me. The amount of group dinners that I went to, I can't do it. Anything more than 4 people, it's overwhelming for my nervous system. Yeah. And so it took me a really long time to learn how to say no, but I practiced saying no to people that I knew loved me already. And then I got used to hearing that out of my own voice, where I was like, oh, okay, I can say, no, actually, I don't enjoy those situations. Right. I'm not going to come. But if you would like to get dinner with me one-on-one, I'm in. I'm in. Of course. So it's like kind of finding that workaround, and also understanding and getting used to hearing yourself saying it, and then standing firm in that boundary.
Right. It's funny because I have a guy friend, and he always is like, the power of no, the power of no. And I'm like, it's actually like technically the power of yes, because it's like you're saying yes to yourself rather than saying yes to someone else. And it's like, if I can't like give me what I want, then how could I ever expect you to do that for me?
In 3, 2, 1, don't forget to bring us back.
Okay, well, I'm gonna fake blame it on Zeus, but I got a squirt bottle now. And so we should have no more problems, but he wants to hang out. So we were talking about not being able to be pleased by other people until you know how to please yourself. However, I don't think I've ever came by myself.
What methods do you use if you're open?
Oh, I'm open. So, like, I have a lot of toys. I love toys.
What's your favorite toy?
My vibrator. That's like kind of like a dildo.
Okay, so internal.
I like to be like on top, then like go in and come out. Okay, you know, like go around like that. But like never. If I just had to use my hands, I'd be so fucked.
I mean, hands take a long time. So also, second question: how long are you exploring and having fun with yourself?
That's the other thing. Oh, when we were talking about you taking like picture or people who haven't seen their vulvas.
Yes.
Like that's like my kink is like my vulva. Like I love, like I get weird sometimes now on porn because I feel like I'm not trusting that it's like necessarily what everyone in the porn wants. Yeah. Per se. And so I just feel like me making porn of myself for literally myself, it's like it's better. It's energetically better.
Yes, definitely.
If that makes sense.
I mean, the porn industry is atrocious. There is ethical porn that you can get into, which I think is entertaining. But I also make videos all the time too. Yeah, it is so like, much fun.
And I'm just like, oh my God.
Get it.
Literally, I'm like, good. You are popping off. And like, that's like also a way sometimes that I'll like we're talking about building intimacy with others. It's like the flirting with myself kind of like after like a fire workout or something. Yes. And I'm like, oh my God, you just smashed that. And like, I just watched myself do that. Yeah. And then I'm like coming home, I know I'm about to take like a hot shower. I'm like grabbing a toy and taking it with me because I'm just like, oh my God, that was hot. Like,
well, so I just kind of want to interject and say the next time that you are doing solo pleasure, then put a timer on for like 20 minutes and give yourself that time to kind of connect in with yourself. Because if we're thinking about vaginas are going to become engorged with our blood when we are aroused, right? So we technically need to get to this point where we are ready for penetration. And when we're like fully ready to come, vibrators allow that to happen much quicker because it is direct stimulation onto that area, which is generally pleasurable. But if you're somebody who likes to go internal, you still have to like engage all of the parts of the clitoris, which is so much bigger than the little nub that you see. There's basically like a whole shaft, and then it goes internal, so then it's on the inside, so you have the vestibular bulbs.
Oh yeah, like it's like that, right?
Yeah, it kind of like goes around like that. So then you also have pleasurable moments like when you are doing internal penetration, so everything can be hit. But if you aren't allowing yourself to become fully aroused, it's going to be harder for you to reach that moment of peak orgasmic pleasure.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, 1,000%.
Okay, cool.
And it's funny because like in college, I was in like a sex class, and one of the things that we had to do, like we had like a semester project, and you had to pick something like to present at the end of the semester. And so I ended up starting sex therapy because I was like, I didn't know about the coming thing. So I was like, all right, I gotta talk to someone about this. However, you know what? I lived with 6 girls, and that was just funny because like everyone knew I like couldn't come. It was like the house problem. And so like I was like, guys, like, and I had the dog, and we think he's annoying now. He's like almost 10. So before, at this point, he was like 3. He was a menace to society, and I would be like, can someone call the dog? Like, I'm trying to masturbate. I was like, I'm trying to do my homework. Like, okay. And so they would like take him out, whatever, and I would have to like do these like exercises for my sex therapy. And one of the things that we like started, well, my roommates were, some of them were in med school, and so my one girlfriend at the time, she's like not understanding. She's like, what do you mean you don't come? And I'm like, I don't really know like how else to tell you that, but like I don't know what that looks like or feels like to me. And so she started doing some research, and my whole life I have been on Adderall.
Oh.
Exactly. And there's like a lot of research for men that are in their 20s.
They only test men.
I know, it's crazy. And so she's like, okay, so I've been doing research too. And she's like, there's a lot of studies for men that are in their early 20s that need Viagra and things like that because they're on Adderall. And she's like, I think that there could be like a correlation, and maybe that's why, whatever. So I was in college at the time, and could like literally like couldn't afford to not be on Adderall. And Pisces, Sun, Aquarius, Moon, Cancer, rising.
You needed it to get shit done, baby.
Literally.
You needed it to get shit done, however you couldn't.
Exactly. So we're like, all right, we're deep in it. And I'm doing the project, yada, 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 whatever. But now we have this like new information that I'm just like cognizant of. And I get out of college, whatever, I moved to LA. When I'm in LA, that's like where I really started to like tap into my spirituality and just like really got curious about like possibilities like across the board. Like I'm like, wait a second, this is not, none of this is adding up really for me. So I'm like, okay. So then I started like, you know, learning about like the power of the mind and stuff like that. And I went on this whole, like I went up into the mountains in Northern California and took myself off Adderall, like basically like detoxed from Adderall, just slept for days up on this weed farm. But there was also this guy that was on the weed farm. And so like I ended up having.
I love that you were detoxing from Adderall on a weed farm. Like this is just the best.
And so I'm up there and like I end up hooking up with this weed farmer, and yeah, like crazy. And so I'm like, you know, I don't need the Adderall. Like I can do anything, like the power of the mind, like da 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 da. So I'm up there doing like adult things, yada, yada, yada. Obviously it's like something that's like in your system for like a long time, but I finally got off of it. And then that was probably like when I was like 25 or 26, I guess. And in the past like 3 years, I've gotten better at it, but like I've literally like gone to sex therapy, had a sex coach, and the sex coach, we were talking the one day, and this is what I was gonna tell you earlier when Reef was like, stop talking right now to each other, because it was, I had this lady and we're like talking and I'm like telling her about my business and like telling her about my relationships and all of these things, and she's like, wait, you don't finish anything. And I'm like, oh my God. Like I was like literally mind blown, because she's like, you can't finish when you're having sex. You don't finish if you start a project. You don't finish with a business. Like, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is crazy. And it's like, is crazy because back to like, everything is connected. Like if you're having a problem, like sexually, there's it's gonna bleed into other parts of your life, and it's like vice versa also. Like
there's a connective thread.
Yeah, it's like, or it's like, you know, you're having trouble with work and then now you're not able to have sex.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, it's also like for a lot of humans, it's really hard to get out of the mind.
Right.
Like that's kind of constantly running, and which is usually indicative of a dysregulated nervous system. So when I was leading like big breathwork groups in Bali, I would have women come up to me afterwards and be like, I had an orgasm. Is that okay? And I was like, bitch, what?
like,
yes.
that's iconic.
Like, that's what we're here for.
Yes.
But that was the first time I was hearing of people breathing into orgasm. And I was like, whoa. Like
Right.
there's something here,
Right.
because obviously then we're balancing out the nervous system when we're doing something like breath work. And they were feeling safe enough to kind of go into that realm of where their mind also wasn't kind of thinking about their to-do list or what they had to do next. It was like, no, we were focused, we were here, this was happening. So that led me down to like trying a bazillion different styles of breath to figure out like what can you build up in your body? What can that feel like?
Right.
But a lot of individuals will hold their breath or kind of tense their abdominal muscles when they're having an orgasm.
Right.
Which also limits how good the orgasm can feel.
Right, like
but
breathe through it.
Yeah, but if you haven't ever kind of brought your attention in on that, you don't know that there's a different way.
Right.
Most individuals who still, you know, self-pleasure will do it in a very similar way that they did when they started. So broaden the horizons,
Right.
explore a little bit more, take more time. The amount of time that people will devote to themselves to have, you know, a sensual practice or a solo pleasure practice is not enough.
well, and it's like you kind of go into masturbating, I feel like a lot of times, like, oh, you know, I got like 10 minutes or like,
Yeah. I need to get this out. I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm so sorry. And listen, like sometimes there's some moments where you just got to squeeze it in, right?
Right.
Like if you need that, that's where you're at. Have
well,
at
and
it.
if you can get yourself to come that fast, that's iconic.
Oh my God, 90 seconds if I need.
That's like
the
it's
amount
funny.
of times where I'm like, oh my God, my Uber's coming and I feel so much sexual tension in my body. Let me just go to town really quick with the right tool, not with my hand, certainly not. It's happened quite a lot, like last week.
No, like it's a thing. That's crazy. That's so fire because it's like
thing.
it helps you be clear. Like I'll talk to my girlfriends and it's like I always am like, you should just come before you go on that date.
100% come before every date and every family interaction.
Yeah,
discharge that shit from you.
Yeah, like it's a good idea.
Yes, if you have a headache, have an orgasm.
Right, like
If you're having a bad day, have an orgasm.
Right, like learn your cheat codes. I'm like ass in the grass, and you're like rub one out. I'm like, yeah, same thing. Like literally. Oh my gosh, I feel like we could literally go for hours because there's so many different like
so many nooks
little
and crannies.
things. Because I got to meet Sarah accidentally, but obviously not at the same time because I feel like we are like very much very similar at Selfish 2 years ago. And I remember being like, I just moved here, and you're like, oh well, there's no East Coast wellness community. Like, and we're literally making it. Like,
I dragged Philly.
no, but you were like, this is where it's gonna happen.
Yes, I needed it to happen. I needed to find it and create it.
You're a catalyst for it, and everyone in the space like knows you, and if they
that
don't
feels
realize,
so weird to me to hear because I feel so lost and alone regularly. So anytime somebody says that, I'm like, oh my God.
no, you're like the Oprah Winfrey of Philadelphia.
But I mean, I just
you get an orgasm, you get an aura picture,
Everyone
like you
comes.
can breathe. I'm like, what? Like you're like a Barbie, like you literally do everything, but it's all like stuff that makes sense together. And I feel like you've also had like so many like lives too that you wouldn't even know about.
Yeah, like I was a high corporate finance bitch. But like, I think we have a lot of iterations in life, which is why I was talking to you. You were like, oh, I want to do all these things. And I'm like, I'm about to be 30. I'm like, yo, you are in your Saturn return, baby girl. Like, hold on for dear life. Wait it out. When I was at your age, I was in I was in real estate. I was managing accountants and doing weird things. And I was so bored and like annoyed by life. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. I switched over into finance, which also bored me to tears. And then I got, past that part of my life and I realized, oh man, I left my partner. I was leaving my job. I was leaving the country. I went to go travel the world because I wanted to have a more enriched lived experience. And I was already a breathwork facilitator and I didn't know if that would be able to be something I could apply as I traveled, but then I did. And then when I landed in Bali, by chance, I didn't know where that was on the map more than 5 years ago. And then it became home.
Yeah.
And the wellness community that I'm craving here in Philly is built because I saw it happen in Bali. And the people that are coming there are very open-minded. They are curious. They're seekers.
Yeah.
Most of us that end up there have something wrong with us.
Yeah.
I say in the most loving way, but like we all come with our trauma and our bullshit. And it was just an interesting thing to kind of be amongst a lot of different women who were not competing. We weren't trying to tear anyone down. There was no gatekeeping. It was like, no, you need help. Come. Oh, I've got this workshop. Oh, I'm going to this talk.
Or like, I know this
here's
person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it was just so easy to be there. And when I came to Philly, also by a whim, I'd been here once before. I'd been here once before to eat some donuts. And I was like, I didn't know that this was going to be it. And then out of nowhere, it just started to kind of fall into place, kind of like Tetris, like, oh, this is working. Oh, you're interested. I just started hosting workshops and was like, we'll see who shows up. It has been an absolute, like, I've been selling out since I started, which is also a really weird thing to kind of take a look at. I am
because
humbled.
it was needed.
Thank you. I'm humbled. And I'm just like, man, if that's what's happening, then obviously someone is feeling called to this, which is why like I started hosting the sensual suppers out of my house, because I want to continue to build that community. I want people to feel safe enough to say, I don't know, or can you explain this, or I'm experiencing that. I had one on Sunday, and the way that all of the women were just interacting was so beautiful. I didn't have to prompt a thing. And now they're like walking away with new friends and inviting them to each other's houses. And I'm like, this is it. Like, I think the pandemic showed us that connection is really important. And then also being intentional with who you choose to spend your time with. For me, working 70-hour work weeks totally got my rocks off in my mid-20s. Now I would rather die. I will do it for myself because I love this, but I'm like, I need to get clear on who do I want close to me? Are we in similar alignment? What can I learn from you? How do we give and take? What does the reciprocity look like? I don't want to stay stagnant. I want to continue to move forward. And I want to do that with people that are on the same level as me. And not in a I'm better than you or worse than you. Just like,
let's go.
Are you a seeker?
Yeah, like
let's do it.
Is it fun? Like, are we having fun? Are we learning? Like, are we growing? That's like literally my LLC is Create Over Compete Enterprises, and it's just based off of like the idea of abundance. Like, even if you meet another breathwork facilitator, like rather than being like you're saying, no gatekeeping, no competition, it's like you're not intimidated by that person. You're like excited, like, oh, hey, like, have you heard of this? Or like, have you ever tried that? And like, what they're teaching you things. It's like when you have like that open heart and the open mind, everything is,
we're always expanding. Like, it's available.
We literally live in a universe of abundance. It's like, even when someone is like in the same field as you and wants like what would seem like the same things as you, it's like, even if they want the same thing as you, like the path to that and like the people that are along the way of that are just going to be different. And like, no one is you.
No. And that's what I always kind of go back to. I teach a breathwork like training certification so you can start to understand how to use the breath. And I'm like, don't be me. I already exist. Like your lived experience is going to be what people need. So I want you to have that authenticity and feel like you can move forward exactly as you are. You do not have to emulate anything that I do because I'm a total fuck up left, right, and center. So like, maybe don't. But like, get curious, go to things. I wouldn't have ever stumbled into the wellness world if I didn't listen to a beloved mentor of mine, Damon Balicki, who was like, maybe breathwork is your thing. And I remember being like, girl, no, whatever. I know how to breathe. Why would I pay money to do that? And then in a couple of months' time, I happened to be on, the floor in basically somebody's living room doing this breathwork. And then 9 months later, I would be in my first training. I wouldn't have ever known. So I always just say, get curious, go to things that pique your interest. And listen, if it sucks, you got a story. Like, I go to other breath workers all the time. So I'm like, let me try this out. Do I need to do this training? How are they facilitating? How can I continue to learn and grow? Because we're in this together. And like, the abundance mindset is there is so much money out there to be made. Way too much. Like, it is available for all of us. We don't have to compete. And if you want to live in that mindset, go for it. But that's debilitating for me. It will tank me. I want to be your fucking friend.
And it's like also just like that. That's like, again, like what you like energy flows where your focus goes. So like when you're taking the time to like look at the person next to you and be like, oh, well, like how can I like one up them, or like I want what they have, but in a way where it's not like you're inspired by that. It's like where you're like trying to like talk smack about it or something. It's like, you're just wasting your energy. You only have $100 of energy a day. Like now you just spent $24 like over there when you needed that like toolkit thing that was $24 and you can't get it now because you just spent it there.
I have seen so many of my friends be so wildly successful, and I have never thought, ugh, no. I'm like, you've shown me that it's possible.
Yes.
Like a girlfriend of mine she was homeless. She was living in her car with her kids, and she started this crazy business and then slayed it. And now I think she's a millionaire. And I'm like, oh, you can launch a course and have it be financially successful. I heard her do that. I turned around, somebody offered me an opportunity to make a course, and then we had a $25,000 launch. Like, it was incredible. And I was like, whoa, okay. So it's like constantly like up leveling and just seeing. So if you're jealous of someone, get curious about what they're doing, and just know like that's available for you also.
Exactly.
It's not because somebody else is succeeding that you are going to fail. And if you look at life like that, you are going to be miserable.
Well, and you're just going to keep failing because you're looking at, that's like what you're focused on.
What was it? Like the compare and despair, which I hear all the time in like Instagram. And like so many friends are like, oh my God, I have to quit it because I can't stop looking at other people. And I don't know why I've never done that. That's just not my thing. Mm-hmm. Do I stalk exes? 1000%. But do I sit there and I'm like, oh my God, I feel bad about myself. I'm like, no. Like I'm being shown what's available and I'm being inspired. Yeah. And I get to see how can I apply that to my life. Yeah. And listen, there's the ups and downs of life, right? Like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had more. But it's like, I have everything I need. Yeah. And if I don't, I'm gonna figure out how to get there. Cause
it's like, what else do you want?
Yes, exactly.
And it's like so cool. That's how like whenever I see, like I had this mentor in LA, and during the pandemic, I did her hair. Like I would do house calls for her regularly. Then the pandemic happened and she's like, I know you're not gonna have a job and I know that sets are gonna be shut down. Like, and she had a lot of money and random things to do around her house. So she's like, I'll pay you to be my assistant basically. But like her and I were very similar in this, like her bathroom, she had her own little bathroom in her house and it was a whole like magazine cutouts and things like that. So she had like a vision board. She's like, no, like I'm right there with you. She's like, cause people will like play me sometimes or like make fun of me to try and whatever. And when I meet people that are like, they love me in my like little like kitty gayness of excitement of life and all of the things, I'm like, oh my God, yes, like this is a safe space, you know? And so she was like that, but for my birthday one year, like they had a Bentley and like a drop top Bentley is like my dream car. Like like big pop up like vibes. Like I'm like, I want that car, like the big body Bentley. Like, and so for my birthday, I like key in the code to the gate and I walk up the driveway and the Bentley is in the driveway with the top down and a big red bow on it and a happy birthday sign. And she's like, this could be yours one day. Like she would be like feed my little like, yes, like it's possible, you know? And I literally like put it on my story at the time and my family was texting me like, bro, you really got a Bentley? And I'm like, the fact that you guys think it's a possibility for me to have a Bentley is enough for me because it's like, you really think I'm like a wizard? Like I think so too, but y'all be looking at me crazy when I say it. And now you're asking me if this is my Bentley and I'm like, yes. But it's like using that and like letting other people like get you excited and
find the tools that work for you. Yeah. Right. And just because somebody has laid out a 10-step way to do something doesn't mean that is going to work for you. Right. So pick and choose and see what feels right, apply that, and then continue to morph and grow. The amount of times that people are like, oh my God, vision boards are so stupid. I made one on a whim and had it be my phone background. I think it was for 2020, maybe 2021. That shit was on there for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. Every single thing on there happened. I didn't spend energy looking into it and being like, how do I scheme to make this happen? It all just clicked into place. So for me, it's something that works. However, like people who are like, oh, my yoga practice is something that really centers me. Yoga pisses me off. I can't do it. I don't like it. It's not for me. And the amount of people are like, oh my God, but you just have to try this instructor. I'm like, or you can just trust that I know myself well enough to know that this is not my modality and it can be yours. And it can work for you. And I'm going to do something else that's probably a little weirder.
And like also, if you feel called to go to a yoga class with that person, you could go though.
Yes. Like I go every now and then.
Like if your friend is like, I'm having a yoga birthday party or
I'm
whatever.
I'm not going. Like, don't invite me to your yoga birthday party. I'm not doing it. I'm not.
But do you know what I mean? Like if it was like the right person in the right situation, like you're on a trip with your best friend and wherever, and she really wants to do it and she doesn't want to do it alone, you just
I would grin and do it.
Figure it out. Like, you know what I mean?
But it's just like figuring out what tools feel right for you and then applying them. I feel like that's everything in life.
Yeah.
And when I hear people being frustrated at their jobs, or they're like, oh my God, I hate this or I hate that, I'm like, well, what do you like?
Right.
Like, what can you use to make your life better?
Right.
And if it makes you so miserable that that's all you can talk about, get the fuck out of it.
Right.
Like, that's where I got with my job. I was like, I'm so tired of complaining about this, but I didn't think entrepreneurship was available for me.
Right.
But I was like, I'm gonna give it my all. And when I hit X amount of dollars in the bank, I will return home and I'll get another shitty desk job. And thankfully that hasn't been my story. Right. But also I'm not too humble to say I would happily go work a job if I had to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be out here trying to like make something work if it doesn't. Like,
well,
I'm a flow in the way that I need to.
Right.
And I'm going to trust that my decisions are going to guide me in the right way because I have the lived experience and the proof that I'm like, okay, no, I know how to make this work. But also entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. Need to lay that out there.
It is a crazy thing for sure. But like also like figuring out what you're saying in the sense of like figuring out what works for you and like leaning into that and stuff. It's like what you were saying earlier about the vision boards, like how people are like, it doesn't work, like like why are you even making one if you think it doesn't work?
Yeah. Well, it's like affirmations. If you're going to write an affirmation that doesn't feel like it's something that you could actually believe in, it's not going to work.
Right.
So don't waste your time. If you put negative energy into something, that's what you are going to get back in return.
Well,
so
and
knock
don't,
it off.
Like check your belief systems also. And like, okay. Check your belief systems also, just in the sense of like, why are you putting $100 million on your vision board if you don't think that that's literally an option for you?
Yeah.
That's just a waste. And then you're playing yourself because why would you put it on there? Like put $10,000 on the vision board so that you get proof of concept. Like,
yeah.
And then when you
hit
get
that,
to 10K, you're like, ah!
That's how I felt. Listen, I moved to Philly with not a lot of money in my bank account, like legitimately not a lot of money. And I moved here because somebody offered me a free home to stay in for a month. Like that's where we were at, bottom of the barrel, wasn't sure what the hell I was doing. And now it is insane. I'm making far more money.
Anytime Sarah has a pop-up there, I do pop-ups with Sarah, and I'm like, instead of selling my stuff, I'm like navigating her line. I'm like, hi, yeah, you're in line. There's 4 people ahead of you.
It's been a gift, but also then like I get to have a team for the Aura business, right? Which is incredible. Yeah. And like, so it's like all of these things are expanding, but I had a little bit of faith in myself at that moment where I was like, no, I can do this. And that's why like with my friends now, I'll like, listen, I will invest in anyone's shit. I will give you $100 if you need. Like I was just on a podcast with my friend and she was like, oh, I'm trying to like get enough money to go on this like girls trip for my 40th birthday. And we got off and I Venmoed her $100 and she was like, you didn't have to do that. I was like, I know I didn't have to do that, but I wanted to do it because I want you to believe that you will hit your $8,000 goal. And if I can be selfless enough to give that to you, it comes back every single time. Every single time I support another small business, without fail, there is a return, either in energetic love or financial return.
Yeah.
And so going from having no money then to having a team of 8 and now 3 businesses is fucking insane. I am very proud of myself. And I'm also interested to see like, where does this continue to grow? Like I need to find other people that I can look up to that I'm like, oh, there is this room for expansion.
Yes.
This is where the next step is. This is what's happening here. But the idea of creating the sense of community, this connection that gets to happen, like this is what makes my heart beat.
Yeah.
And like the money is a byproduct.
Right.
So people are constantly like, well, how do I do this? How do I make the money like you? I'm like, it took me 5 years to turn a profit in breath work. 5 years of concerted effort. Like I made enough money to pay my bills, but I certainly wasn't like balling like I was in my finance days.
Right.
So like I had to reconfigure that and figure out where did I want to put my energy? What did I want it to look like? And how do I move forward from there? And then thankfully things have been falling into place. Ideally they continue going in that direction. Who knows what the future has in store? But like similarly to you, I want to lead with that positive mindset. I want to have belief that I'm going to be taken care of no matter what.
Right.
No matter what, with plenty of orgasms, please.
That's like my one friend, she's a lesbian, and she's like, I know you're not really a lesbian because your nails are too long.
Oh my God. I miss having nails. I fish in pussies all the time, so I can't.
Can we just show your vagina picture before we wrap up? Or your vagina.
I mean, this is my little yoni pillow. You really want to eat this. And so I was bringing, because I we might have talked about something that this might have been helpful for, but just a little education in the realm of, the clitoris, which it just kind of pops open right here, but like massaging the hood. The left quadrant is an area I kind of want you to explore when you're in self-pleasure next time, just to see the sensations.
Okay.
But like just explore all of the different parts and have fun with it, and use different kind of pressures or move your fingers in different ways, and just note what feels good for you. I have full faith we're going to get you to some mind-blowing orgasms. I'm now making my personal project.
No,
just to be
literally.
like, let's see what happens, but definitely like slow down, take time. I love
20
this little
minutes thing
pillow.
is crazy.
Oh yeah, you have to. Like, look how squishy and puffy this is. Is your pussy that squishy right now? I doubt it. I doubt it, But like we need to wait until it's engorged and then work with the way that your body is built to.
Right.
Penis ejaculatory orgasms are much easier to get to in a shorter amount of time. We are not like that.
No.
Treat it like a slow burn.
Well, and it's like what we talked about earlier too, and I forgot to mention this because this was a quote I saw on Instagram, and it literally blew my mind particularly because this summer was the first time in a really long time that I can attest to the quote, but it was like, she's wetter when she's watered.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, yes. And like, I wasn't even being fully watered in the ways that I would necessarily choose, but like I definitely was getting watered more than I was used to in a sense. And the one time, and like he was like average, like everything physically, like looking, or like, like it's not like he had like a huge dick or like like
bigger doesn't always mean better is
Right.
another thing. Like motion of the
1000%.
ocean is a thing. Energetic connection is a thing. Listening to what's actually happening in the body, what their hands like, what their mouth like.
Yes. And just like, also just like the bond between the two,
Yeah.
period. And there was one time I literally squirt and I was like, yo, did you see that? He's like, let's fucking go. We're like hyped up. I'm like, I can do that. Let's go.
You can do
like,
that. But then like also like with squirting, like people think like that's like the be all end all of an orgasm. You can squirt without an orgasm. So welcome. It doesn't mean that there's the absence of like the pleasure that's happening there, but the amount of times I've squirted, I'm like, oh shit, that's interesting. And I'm like, I didn't get to feel what I thought that would feel like, because there are so many different layers and so many different places to explore, and all of the different kinds of orgasms that we can have as individuals is fascinating. Like when I had my first nipple orgasm, I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like there is nothing happening down there, and like I got to that. Let it be slow.
Right.
And listen to what your body's
Take your
saying, and then advocate for what you want in that moment.
Right. Okay, well, I'm obviously gonna need to have you back, which Sarah knows where I live now. I'm gonna give her the code, and I'm gonna come a lot in the next couple months. But I'm actually not. I gave up men right now.
Great.
So like, it's like one
Fall
of
in love
those
with
things.
yourself, baby.
Yes. So I'm like,
I'm gonna
I
be
guess I'm
checking in
gonna
on
have
you.
to talk to these two.
I mean, or just like one, like just because we can like not really like cut any part of your gorgeous yoni, which you said is beautiful. So
I can't wait to show you.
yes.
All right, we gotta go. Thanks for hanging out. Before we go, can you plug us and how we can learn more and work with you and just see more of you?
Yes, of course. I have a very annoying name, so you can find me on the internet.
meant
land.
iconic.
I have an iconic name. My website is sarasil.com, SARASIL.com, and then you can find me on Instagram at Sara Silverstein.
Perfect. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, baby.
You're the best.
Popping the cherry.
Yes, literally perfect. I'm like, I love it.